Hello and welcome to Bringing Up Nick, where I take one of my favorite movies from my childhood and have Nick see them, believe it or not, for the first time. Now, I'm picking a cult classic for today's because I'm really interested to hear his impressions. It's David Cronenberg's Videodrome. Nick, what do you think Videodrome is about?
This is going to be a hard one. Videodrome is the story of a man who finds a haunted VHS tape that he puts into his haunted TV, and it makes his TV kind of gooey and liquidy. He can stick his arm in and reach around. He puts his head in the TV and it's gooey in there. He falls in. He goes on a trippy experience, comes out, and then he looks at his TV and a lady comes out and he kisses the lady, and it lifts the curse and he can watch his TV in peace.
All right, let's see what happens when Nick sees Videodrome for the first time. All right, both of us took some time out to see Videodrome. I've seen it probably about 20 times. You got to see it the first time. I have to say, I am very, very excited. There's so many things I want to hear about and your thoughts of it. But first, what was the experience like? I mean, you kind of thought this was a horror movie.
Yeah, I don't think I was 100% wrong. It was cool though watching it because I went into it expecting something extremely weird, and for the first 30 minutes I thought maybe I was wrong, and I was like, oh, this is a pretty tame. I was expecting some weird like Lynchian, like Eraserhead type thing, and instead I went into it and I'm like, oh, this is kind of like a weird sort of interesting horror movie with characters who I kind of want to know more about, and then it very quickly nosedived into insanity.
I mean, at the end of the day, though, would you necessarily call it horror in that traditional sense, be there a monster or supernatural?
No, it's not a horror movie the way a horror movie is a horror movie, but there are moments where you're just like, I don't super want to be looking at the TV right now.
No, I mean, it's been termed in a lot of David Cronenberg's movies, including probably his most famous one, The Fly. It's called body horror. This idea of sort of transformation, and a lot of it, especially in Videodrome, comes from his love of the beat writer, William Burroughs, who was quite obsessed with this idea of man going through some sort of transformational experience, and the trappings of language and the way that we do things is what's actually holding us back on our sort of evolutionary odyssey.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of evolving past the body to it, with like Professor Oblivion like having been dead for 11 months and like basically living vicariously through all these videos he made of himself.
Well, and the whole idea that he'll only appear on television, on television. I mean, it's just these sort of brilliant moments that, in the instance, just kind of like, okay, that's kind of genius. But altogether, it becomes this very uncomfortable and odious way of looking at the world. Because when this movie came out, which I believe was 1982, video, like this idea that you could capture it on a tape, was very novel.
I thought it was interesting also that those were not VHS tapes as I recognized them.
Well,
right?
there were some Betamax tapes too.
Okay.
That was Sony's format that was deemed superior, that surprise, surprise, was not adopted by the general populace.
Yeah, I was like, those look a little squatter and a little different than I remember them. I would love to see what a 2013 equivalent of Videodrome would be like, because it almost feels like prophetic a little bit in a way, just like this sort of culture. Like, we haven't gotten less violent, and we haven't gotten less sexual, and we haven't gotten less obsessed with documenting ourselves at all. I don't know. It felt very relevant still.
Well, and the idea of the video word made flesh, this typical way of communication and of our existence be, by the written word or these means of exchange, that now we're in this Videodrome. That, you can see it almost trying to anticipate, but not able to articulate what the internet becomes in terms of how we can communicate all at once, and that we're part of this larger hive mind.
Totally.
The television screen is the retina of the mind's eye. Therefore, the television screen is part of the physical structure of the brain. Therefore, whatever appears on the television screen emerges as raw experience for those who watch it. Therefore, television is reality, and reality is less than television.
it's such a self-reflexive, like weirdly meta movie. Like I remember sitting on my couch and watching it and thinking like, I'm sitting here watching a screen, watching a guy watch a screen, on which there's a guy on a screen being interviewed, and it was just like I'm sure people watching this feel the same way, where it's like they're sitting there in front of their computer watching two guys on a screen talk in front of a screen,
where
it's showing footage from the or this,
yes,
yeah, footage from a movie. Like it's crazy.
Of course, Oblivion is not the name I was born with. That's my television name. Soon, all of us will have special names. Names designed to cause the cathode ray tube to resonate.
Meanwhile, we all have Twitter handles that we use instead of our real names at the bottom of all these videos we're making. Like, how perfect is that, you know?
Well, and then the whole idea of the cathode ray emission. And, you know, that everyone needs a little bit of a dose of television because that's going to patch us into the world's mixing board.
God, yeah, that line in particular, I was like...
You think a few doses of TV are going to help them?
Watching TV will help patch them back into the world's mixing board.
Oh, you mean the internet? You mean how when I put my phone down for an hour, I feel completely disconnected from reality? Is that what you're talking about? Because that is exactly the world we live in
Now,
today.
I want you to think about this. I saw this movie, probably inappropriately, but I saw this movie when I was 12 at my good friend Andre's house. So I'm going to assume that was probably 87, maybe 86. And I was mystified by this movie. And I also didn't have even an internet to go to try to figure out all these answers.
Yeah.
And it plagued me, the ideas and the uncertainty about it. 'Cause it doesn't bring certain answers. And the part that I still am obsessed with is there's never a moment where you know that he's fallen into a hallucinatory state.
Yeah.
You don't know when this reality starts to degrade because it's all so smooth going into that crazy ending there on that rotting boat, this, you know, previous form of communication and travel in the world.
Yeah, I actually, that final scene is interesting because I was anticipating, and maybe this is just contemporary movie structure like screwing with me, but I thought there was going to be like a third act after that, where after he shot himself, it was going to go full crazy practical effects makeup and he would have fully become this Videodrome monster and he would go in and like fight something, you know, like.
Well, I mean, but he says, "Long live the new Flash."
Get the Videodrome! Long live the new Flash!
Because he's getting rid of his old flesh.
Right,
I mean,
and-
the question is, where is Max Rand? Has he somehow been subsumed into this larger kind of network of thought and communication?
I think what's cool also is that like you said, the hallucination stuff is so seamless and so like he wakes up and it was all a dream, but then he hallucinates a body next to him, or does he like that stuff is so seamlessly integrated that it kind of doesn't matter when he is or isn't hallucinating, because by the end of the movie everything's so crazy that you're just like, well, this is the reality that we are being presented with, and we have to just kind of accept the rules of this movie.
This is 1982, where you could get away with making a movie like this because movie production was being run, you know, at that B-movie level by just, you know, cigar-chomping men who couldn't care less about the content of it.
Right.
They just wanted to see you keep the cost down and we're going to see a return on it.
That was my biggest question, was like, who the hell paid for this? Like, this is a movie-ass movie that was promoted by a big movie studio alongside movies like E.T. and stuff. Like,
the Canadian government, I think, gave some
Yeah?
money to this because they were trying to foster the arts, and this and some of other Cronenberg's movies got them into a lot of trouble. You know, one thing we haven't even gotten to is, what was your reaction to the fact that he seems to grow a piece of female genitalia on his stomach?
I didn't know that this was a body horror movie going in, and to see something such a dramatic practical effect in what had been up until that point a pretty tame movie was like a shocking thing. And I like how sort of direct these metaphors seem to be of him like literally putting like a gun into his stomach, like feeding himself with it, or like the tapes or whatever. I'm like, it's not too obfuscated. You can pretty clearly see like, oh yeah, he's feeding himself this sort of garbage media.
Or it's just creating this kind of unique, you know, as he becomes something else, there's a sexual component.
Yeah.
An unpleasant one,
Yeah.
as he kind of gives birth to this new version of himself.
It's gross, but it's like elegant. Like it's a straightforward enough thing where you're like, I don't like what I'm looking at as a visual thing, but I feel like I'm picking up what you're putting down.
So, you know, I think my final question for you, Nick, did you like it?
I mean, I watched it last night. I feel like you're gonna have to ask me in like a year. I need like 3 chances to maybe rewatch it, maybe read about it some more. But yeah, I wasn't bored. It was not a boring movie. It never felt like it was being weird in like a pretentious way or anything. Like it was always it felt like everything it showed me was for a reason. I feel like there's a lot to mine from it if I go back to it. I feel like a second watching that movie would probably be beneficial.
Yeah.
It feels like it lends itself to rewatching. So,
Yes.
and I think I will. I think I'll go back to Videodrome.
And when I was a student in college, there were probably more academic texts that would cite this movie and so how it works in sort of a postmodern realization in cinema than just about any other film out there. So good. Maybe we'll put off having you watch The Brood. That's I think maybe one Cronenberg a year is probably all that you can take.
Okay, yeah.
But for all of you out there, thank you very much for watching another episode of Bringing Up Nick. This has been a lot of fun doing these last 4 episodes. We're thinking about doing a batch more, but regardless, I think from where we started and where we ended, Nick has been brought up.